On Mother's Day, I was humiliated by my own daughter. The card looked innocent enough, pink, covered in flowers, with my grandkids' little doodles on the front. Danielle, my daughter, smiled and said, "Read it out loud, Mom. It's from all of us." I smiled back, my heart full. I was 74 years old, wearing my favorite green dress, the one that always made me feel a little elegant. The house smelled like pancakes and sunshine streamed through the windows. For a moment, everything was perfect. Then I began to read. Roses are red, violets are blue. My voice trembled as my eyes moved to the next line. You're a heavy burden. No one wants you here. The words didn't make sense at first. Then they sank in like knives. The room went silent, just for a moment. And then, laughter. Michael, my son-in-law, laughed the loudest, cruel, mocking laughter that echoed through the room. Danielle tried to cover her mouth, but I saw her shoulders shaking with laughter too. Even the children, not understanding what they were laughing at, giggled because the adults were. "Did you see your face, Mom?" Danielle gasped between laughs. "Michael, did you get a picture?" My heart shattered. I could feel my chest tightening as tears rolled down my cheeks. The card slipped from my shaking hands and fell to the floor. "It's just a joke, Mom," Danielle said, still smiling. "Don't take it so seriously. You've always been so dramatic." Michael bent down, picked up the card, and looked at me. "Yeah, Grace, we were just joking. But, you know," he hesitated. "Maybe you've been a bit too present lately." "Too present?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Danielle sighed and sat across from me. "There are places, nice ones for people your age," she said softly. "Senior living communities. You'd be more comfortable there. With people like you." And just like that, Mother's Day became the loneliest day of my life. The word senior living echoed in my head like a death sentence. My own children wanted to throw me away like I was nothing but old junk. My lips trembled. "But I thought I was coming to celebrate Mother's Day with you," I whispered. Michael's voice cut through the silence, sharp, cold, almost rehearsed. "You are, Mom. But it's time to be realistic. You're not young anymore. You need special care. We have our own lives." The words hit me harder than I could bear. The grandkids just stared at me, confused. The oldest, barely 8 years old, walked over and held my hand. "Grandma, why are you crying?" Before I could answer, Danielle gently pulled him away. "Come here, son. Grandma's fine. She's just being sentimental." I sat there surrounded by my family, feeling more alone than I had in my entire life. On the very day meant to celebrate my motherhood, my own daughter had turned me into a joke. A cruel, twisted joke. Slowly, I stood up. My legs were shaking, my heart even more. I should just go. Danielle didn't even move. "Okay, Mom. We'll call you later." I walked to the door, holding on to whatever little dignity I had left. But inside, my world had completely fallen apart. That night, in my empty house, I cried until there were no tears left. But something inside me had changed. The humiliation, the pain had awakened something that had been silent for years. It was time for my family to learn the truth about who Grace really was. The next morning, I blocked all of them. Every number. Every message. But before I moved on, I sat in my favorite armchair. The same chair where I had nursed Danielle 45 years ago. And I let the memories flow like a movie in my mind. It all started when I was 29. Danielle's father had walked out on us when she was only 3. One morning, he was simply gone. On the kitchen table, he left a note. "I can't do this life. I'm sorry." And that was where my story truly began. He didn't even say goodbye to his little girl. That night, I remember holding Danielle in my arms as she cried for her father. "Daddy had to go far away, my love," I whispered, even though I had no idea where he'd gone. That night, I made a silent promise: my daughter would never go without anything. And I kept that promise. For 15 long years, I worked double shifts at the textile mill. My hands were rough with calluses from sewing uniforms until midnight. Every extra cent I saved went straight into Danielle's future. When she turned 17 and told me she wanted to study nursing, I sold my mother's jewelry, the only valuable thing I had left. But when I saw that light in her eyes, the dream in her voice, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Mommy, are you sure?" she asked. "My love," I told her, "your education is the most important thing in this world." During her 5 years of university, I worked weekends cleaning offices. I'd come home with an aching back and tired eyes, but every time I saw Danielle studying at the dining table, it was all worth it. The day she graduated, I cried tears of pride. "We did it, Mommy," she said, hugging me tightly. "This wouldn't have been possible without you." Later, she met Michael. By the time Danielle returned from work, the children were clean, happy, and asleep. I don't know what we at first. I liked him polite, hardworking, respectful. He seemed to truly love her. When they decided to get married, I paid half of the wedding $12,000 I had spent years saving. "Mom, this is too much," Danielle said when I handed her the check. "Nonsense," I smiled. "It's the most important day of your life. You deserve it." When they bought their first home, I gave them the down payment $25,000. It was everything I had, but seeing them happy filled me with peace. Then came the grandkids, 2 beautiful little souls who became the light of my life. When Danielle went back to work after maternity leave, I became their free babysitter. For 3 years, every morning at 6, I walked 6 blocks to their house. I made breakfast, dressed the kids, took them to the park, fed them, bathed them, told them stories. "Did do without you, Mom," she used to say. "You're an angel." But slowly, something changed. The thank yous became rare. My advice started sounding like interference. When I mentioned that the little one's cough seemed serious, Michael said coldly, "Grace, who's the parent here?" The first time they spoke to me that way, I stayed silent. I thought maybe I had crossed a line. But then came the little comments. "Mom, you don't have the same energy anymore." "Grace, you mixed up the vitamins again, maybe you should rest more at home." Each word chipped away at me. Yet, I still went every single day. Because that's what mothers do. I kept helping. I kept giving my all. 2 years ago, when Michael lost his job, I started sending them $500 every month just so they wouldn't lose the house. "It's only temporary," they said. "Just until Michael finds something better." 6 months later, Michael found a new job. But they never told me to stop. They just kept taking the money as if it had become their right. When the kids needed new computers for school, I paid $2,000 without being asked. When Danielle's car broke down, I gave them $4,000 for the repairs. When they decided to remodel the kitchen, I contributed $8,000 more. Little by little, I became invisible, the silent provider, the one who fixed everything, but was no longer part of anything. I wasn't asked for advice anymore. I wasn't included in decisions. I was just there to give, not to belong. A year ago, Danielle organized a family dinner for Michael's birthday. I found out by accident one of my grandkids mentioned the secret party they were having. I called her, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "Why didn't you invite me?" I asked. "Oh, Mom, it was just a small thing, only the 4 of us. You'd have been bored." But later that night, I saw the photos on social media. There were 20 people there, Michael's family, friends, neighbors. Everyone had been invited, except me. That night, I cried quietly in my room. But I told myself it was probably a mistake, a simple oversight. Except oversights became a routine. They forgot my birthday. They canceled our lunches. And when I stopped by unannounced, I could see it in their faces, that look of annoyance, like I was in the way. Then came the final straw. 3 months ago, I was helping with dinner when I heard Michael talking on the patio. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Yeah, my mother-in-law lives alone," he said. She's getting really dependent. No, she's not sick, but you know how they get at that age. Yes, we're looking at options to move her to a proper place. I froze. My own son-in-law planning to send me away like I was some burden, some old piece of furniture that didn't fit anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling every sacrifice I had ever made crash down on me. All my love. All my money. All my life, and now I was nothing more than an inconvenience. But what they didn't know was that I had a secret. Something I had kept hidden for decades. My mother, before she died, had told me about a property of family inheritance in Nassau, Bahamas. A beachfront condo that became mine when I turned 70. It had been quietly rented for years. And it was worth far more than they could ever imagine. The money had been accumulating in an account I never touched. I also had investments, bonds, stocks, certificates of deposit, all built from the inheritance my Aunt Lucille left me when she passed away without children. Over time, the money grew quietly while I lived simply on my modest Social Security check. In total, I had almost $400,000. $400,000 that my family knew nothing about. They thought I was just a poor old woman, living off government help. They never realized that I had been the one funding their comfort, not because I had to, but because I loved them. But after that Mother's Day, something inside me broke. Completely. That cruel little card, the one that called me a heavy burden, became my wake-up call. I stayed up all night, sitting alone in the dark, holding that card in my trembling hands. The words burned in my mind. No one wants you here. But then, as the tears dried on my cheeks, something changed. The pain began to fade, and in its place came clarity. Strength. Determination. For the first time in decades, I saw the truth. I wasn't the burden. I was the foundation. The one holding everything together. I stood up slowly and went to my bedroom. From the top drawer of my dresser, I took out a small wooden box, the one I hadn't opened in months. Inside were all my documents. Bank statements. Property deeds. Investment papers, proof of everything I had quietly built while they were too busy ignoring me. As I flipped through the pages, I started calculating. And when I saw the final number, I had to sit down. In the past 5 years alone, I had given Danielle and Michael exactly $67,000. $67,000. That's how much I had given them. Money they accepted as if it were their birthright. While treating me worse and worse with each passing year. The down payment on their house $25,000. The wedding $12,000. 2 years of monthly help another $12,000. The kids' computers $2,000. Car repairs $4,000. The kitchen remodel $8,000. And countless small expenses another $4,000. Every dollar, a piece of my heart. Meanwhile, I was still living in my modest little house. Still wearing the same green Sunday dress. Still walking to the grocery store just to save a few cents on gas. But that wasn't what truly hurt. What broke me wasn't the money. It was remembering how their love for me had faded. I thought about my grandson's birthday 6 months ago. I had arrived early, smiling, excited to help decorate, like I always did. But when I knocked on the door, Michael opened it, his face tight with irritation. "Grace," he said coldly. "The party doesn't start until 3. Why are you here so early?" "I thought I could help with the preparations," I said softly. "We don't need help," he replied. "Danielle has everything under control." Behind him, I saw his mother Brenda. Tying balloons, laughing with the kids. She had been invited to help. I hadn't. I stood there on the doorstep, feeling like a stranger in my own family. "I can wait outside until 3, I whispered. My throat burning with shame. "Don't be dramatic, Mom," Danielle said, stepping out from the kitchen. Wiping her hands on her apron. "You can stay, just don't get in the kitchen. You know you always get confused with recipes." Confused with recipes. Me. The woman who had cooked for that family for decades. I smiled faintly to hide the hurt. But inside, something cracked again. Just a little deeper this time. That day, I sat quietly in a corner of the patio, feeling like a stranger at my own grandson's birthday party. I watched as Brenda, my son-in-law's mother, laughed and helped with the food, while the guests complimented her on the cake she'd baked. No one noticed me. No one even asked if I needed a chair in the shade. And yet, I was the one who had paid for half of that party. When it was time to sing happy birthday, I stayed in the back, clapping softly, smiling faintly, while everyone else formed a circle around my grandson. No one noticed I wasn't in the family photos. Later that night, as I quietly picked up dirty plates, my little grandson came over to me. "Grandma, why were you so quiet today?" "I was just tired, my love," I lied, forcing a smile. Then he said something that pierced straight through my heart. "Grandma Brenda says you're too old for big parties." Too old. Brenda, who was only 3 years younger than me, was telling my own grandchildren that I was too old. Those words stayed with me all night. And yet, even after that humiliation, I kept helping. I kept giving. Kept hoping things would somehow get better. How foolish I had been. I remembered last Christmas. I had spent nearly $3,000 on gifts for everyone. A bicycle for my oldest grandson. A tablet for the youngest. French perfume for Danielle. A power tool Michael had once mentioned wanting. I arrived that night with my arms full of beautifully wrapped presents. My heart full of excitement. The children ran toward me, smiling. But before they could open the gifts, Danielle's voice cut through the air. "Kids, put Grandma's presents under the tree with the others. We'll open everything tomorrow." And just like that, my gifts disappeared among the mountain of expensive packages they had bought for themselves. When the unwrapping began, no one mentioned who had given what. The kids mumbled vague thank yous to everyone. But the most painful moment came afterward. I had brought a special gift for Danielle. A pearl necklace that once belonged to my grandmother. An antique, passed down through 3 generations of women. A piece of our family's story. "Mom, it's really pretty," Danielle said, barely glancing at it. "But you know I don't wear much jewelry. Maybe you should save it for when the kids are older." She handed the box back to me, without even opening the clasp to see the pearls. That night, back in my empty house, I sat on my bed, holding that little pearl box to my chest. It wasn't the money that hurt. It was the indifference. The coldness towards something that had come straight from my heart. And that was when I knew something inside me had to change. Because 2 months later, when I got the flu, everything fell apart. I lay in bed for an entire week, burning with fever. My body ached, my hands trembled, even walking to the bathroom felt impossible. Out of desperation, I picked up the phone and called my daughter. "Danielle, sweetheart, could you please bring me something to eat? I'm not feeling well." Her voice came through cold and distant. "Oh, Mom, we're so busy right now. Michael's swamped with work and I'm on a double shift. Can't you ask a neighbor?" I whispered, "But honey, I can barely walk." "Mom," she sighed, "you're not a little girl anymore. You need to learn to take care of yourself. We can't come running every time you catch a cold." A cold. She called my fever, my trembling body, a cold. And then, she hung up. She didn't call again. Not once. Not for an entire week. It was Mrs. Johnson, my 82-year-old neighbor, who came to check on me. She brought me homemade soup, tucked a blanket around me, and made sure I took my medicine. A woman I barely knew showed me more kindness than my own daughter. When I finally recovered and went to see my family again, no one asked how I'd been. No one even mentioned that week of sickness. It was as if I had vanished, like I didn't exist. And that's when the truth hit me. I wasn't a beloved mother. I wasn't a cherished grandmother. I was their emotional ATM. When they needed money, there was Grace. When they needed free childcare, there was Grace. When they needed someone to blame, there was Grace. But when Grace needed love, care, or even a simple phone call, Grace was nowhere. Grace didn't exist. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I opened my old laptop, my hands shaking, and logged into my online bank account for the first time in months. I canceled the $500 monthly transfer to Danielle. Closed the family emergency account that only they ever used. And then, I changed my will. Everything I had once set aside for Danielle and Michael would now go to a foundation for abandoned seniors. People who knew what loneliness really felt like. And then, I did something I never imagined I would do. I bought a plane ticket. A one-way flight to Nassau, Bahamas. To finally see the beachfront property I had inherited. To finally start living the life I actually deserved. But before leaving, I wanted them to understand exactly what they had lost. That Tuesday morning, I woke up after barely 3 hours of sleep. But for the first time in years, I felt completely awake. Completely alive. I put on my most elegant gray suit. The one I'd bought for Danielle's university graduation, but had only worn once. I did my makeup carefully. Pinned my hair into a neat, sophisticated bun. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a needy old woman anymore. I saw strength. Dignity. Control. First stop, the bank. My financial advisor, Mr. Henderson, looked startled when I walked in. Mrs. Grace. What brings you here so early? I need to make a few important changes, I said. My voice calm but firm. For the next 2 hours, I rebuilt my entire financial life. I canceled every automatic transfer to Danielle's account. Closed the joint account we'd opened 3 years ago. Moved money from my investments straight into my own hands. Mr. Henderson hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure about this? These are big changes. I looked him straight in the eye. Completely sure. It's my money. And I'll do whatever I want with it. Then I headed to my lawyer's office. Mr. Franklin, the man who'd known me since Danielle was a little girl. I need to rewrite my will, I said firmly as I walked in. He slowly removed his glasses. Grace, is everything all right? This is a serious change. I smiled softly. Everything is finally all right. For the first time in years, I see clearly. I told him exactly what I wanted. Every single thing I had once left to Danielle and Michael would now go to a foundation for homeless seniors. And as for my grandchildren, I created a trust they could only access when they turned 25. And only if they maintained genuine contact with me. Not out of duty. Out of love. Mr. Franklin frowned. Grace, don't you want to think this over for a few more days? These changes can't be undone. I met his gaze, steady and calm. I've already thought about it, Mr. Franklin. 4 years. I've had 74 years to think about it, Mr. Franklin. And the last 5 taught me everything I needed to know. I signed those papers with a steady hand. No shaking. No hesitation. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. My next stop was the travel agency. I'd spent all night researching my property in Nassau. A beautiful 3-bedroom condo by the sea. For years it had been quietly rented out. Earning money I never even touched. I'd like to fly to Nassau this Friday, I told the agent. Is this a vacation, ma'am? She asked. I smiled. No, it's a liberation trip. I booked a first-class ticket. If I was starting a new life, I was going to do it in style. But before I left, I had one last thing to do. The letters. I got home at noon, sat at my desk, and took out the elegant stationery I'd bought years ago. The kind meant for something important. It was time to explain everything. The first letter was for Danielle. My dearest daughter. By the time you read this, I'll be on my way to Nassau. To the home you never knew I owned. I've made the decision to end the financial support I've been giving you all these years. The $500 transfers are cancelled. The joint account is closed. This isn't punishment, it's a lesson. One I should have taught you long ago. Independence. For decades, I gave you everything. My time, my money, my love. But somewhere along the way, you stopped seeing me as your mother. And started treating me as your maid, your bank, your convenience. The Mother's Day card that was just the final straw. The truth is, the distance began long before that. I've changed my will. My inheritance will go to those who truly value love and kindness. Your children, my grandchildren, will inherit only if they maintain a real, loving connection with me. Don't call for money. Don't send the children to soften me. If you want your mother back, show me that you value who I am, not what I give. Your mother, who has finally learned to value herself. Grace. The second letter was for Michael. Michael. I never saw you as just a son-in-law. I accepted you as the son I never had. But you made me feel like an inconvenience. Someone to quietly get rid of. I heard your conversation 3 months ago. The one where you called me old furniture that needed to be moved out of the way. What you didn't know is that I've always had a proper place waiting for me. A home in Nassau. Investments that earn more than you do in a year. And the freedom to live exactly how I choose. For years, I helped you both. Paid for repairs, covered bills, fixed your emergencies. Not out of duty, but love. And you mistook that love for weakness. Now, it's time for you to stand on your own. When I finished the letters, I placed them neatly on the coffee table, ready to be found. Then I sat back, took a deep breath, and smiled. It had taken me 74 years. But I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life. You teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. For decades, I accepted crumbs of affection. Because I was afraid of being alone. But now I know. Being alone is far better than being surrounded by people who don't respect you. And the moment I realized that, I wasn't alone anymore. I was free. I was going to Nassau. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I was excited about my future.